The 1970s gave KTIB listeners the voice of John Raynor, a multi-purpose on-air personality with many vivid memories. Let's hear some of them right now. Mr. John Raynor, how's everything?
Hi, everything's fine, William. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. Now, where are you originally from?
Originally from right here in Thibodaux. I was born right here in Thibodaux and went to school here, Thibodaux High School, class of 74, and Nichols State also. Graduated in computer science from the university. And from 10th grade all through college, I work here.
Before you came in here, was broadcasting always something you were interested in?
Oh, well, it was. I had been interested in radio since I was about 9 years old when my older brother gave me a shortwave radio. And I would stay up at night listening to Deutsche Welle, the Voice of Germany, or Radio Holland, or Radio South Africa. Radio Moscow was popular at the time when it broadcast a lot of propaganda. So was Radio Havana. And all of these foreign countries that we just really never thought about having a radio outlet, all of a sudden that was opened up, and it was wonderful. So I was hooked on radio after that.
Well, when did you first started working up here at KTIB?
I started here in April, I want to say, of 72. 71 or 72, I don't really remember. But it was April, and it was right after I had come back from a junior achievement conference up in Indiana, and I came back and I met Hugh Smith, who was the manager at the time, and he gave me an audition, handed me some news to read, and gave me a chance. It was part of the distributive education program, or the DECA program at Thibodaux High School, where you work part of the time after school. You go to school from until about noon or 1 o'clock, and then you go to your work job in the afternoon. You work there, and it's part of your grade. And that's what I actually wound up doing for this. I really hadn't decided on what I was going to do for my outside job, and then I found this, and I really liked it. It was something that really appealed to me because it was local. It was something that was right here that affected people right here in Thibodaux. My family and friends, could hear us.
Okay, so besides doing news, did you also spin records as well?
Everything. And at that time, you did everything there was. Now, this was before any automation, before any automatic joining of networks, before any canned music, before CDs. We had some reel-to-reel tape, and we had the carts that I see still survive. But mostly it was, everything was live. There was virtually nothing pre-recorded. All the newscasts were live, and you did everything. You gathered news. You helped write it. We did sports broadcasts for the high schools that I did the not play-by-play, but the color commentary along with Roy Pugh. If there was a remote, we did the remotes. Then it wasn't uncommon to have to come back from the remote and bring the equipment, and then do a board shift after that. So a little bit of everything in those days when I started in 71.
Was it sometimes a little difficult on the air, like if the turntable broke or if the record was at the wrong speed?
It was really bad when the turntables were located behind you. When they were in locations off to your right and left, you really couldn't reach to them and talk on a large microphone that was, although it hung in place, there were springs that held it in place, so if you moved it, it creaked, and maybe nobody in the audience would know what was going on, but all your coworkers would know what you were trying to do, is trying to cue up a record or get a record or change a record while you were vamping for time, doing the weather or doing a PSA or something like that. So that was fun. Having music on carts came along a little bit later, and that was great. It was a lot easier to do, except when the cart machines would go, they would usually go in the middle of the worst possible time when you were out of the control room at the Associated Press machine, or in the control room trying to record something or record an interview, or maybe somewhere else in the station.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about a lot of the good people you worked with over the years. And, of course, one gentleman you probably worked with for a good while would have been our long-time owner, Raymond Sadie. Speak some words about him.
I sure did. Raymond bought the station while I was working here, and I was one of 2 employees that was kept when the station was purchased, so God bless him for that. He certainly had a unique management style, I think is probably the best way to put it. And part of it was just Raymond, the actor, who was playing a part, I think, to a large extent. That's why a lot of people remember him as being larger than life. He had some interesting ideas about pronunciations of words, and would not hesitate to stop on the side of the road and write down a word that you mispronounced while doing the news, and he would be happy to bring it in and bring it to your attention the next time he saw you. Which was always a thrill a minute because you didn't know what he was going to do. Tremendous salesman, just the best salesman ever. When I finished college and was starting to sell here, which I was really reluctant to do, and I'm still not in sales, but I was really reluctant to do, but he gave me some coaching. He explained, what we were trying to do, and I really believed in the product, so that really helped. But I just wasn't cut out to sell on commission. I never was, but he was awfully good at it. And I also knew him through the Little Theater Association, both here in Thibodaux and in the Houma-Terrebonne area. I was on the board of directors of both organizations, Thibodaux Playhouse and the Houma Le Petit Theater in Houma. And Raymond wasn't on the board at that time, but we did a fair number of shows in common, and he directed me in a couple of plays, actually.
Wow.
He was a really great broadcaster.
Were you also here then? Were you also with Mr. Block on the station?
Yes, I was. See, I was hired in 71, when the original owners, Delta Broadcasters, Mr. Block, Ferd Block, June, two of his friends, Sam Larson from New Orleans, and Eddie Jackson, who owned Eddie's Furniture. They were the three owners of the station and had been since its original licensing. They were the original licensees. Mr. Larson was based in New Orleans, so we almost never saw him. But Mr. Block was one of those hands-off owners. He would come by once in a while and want to know what was going on, but generally he didn't give us any trouble. He just supported us and really was a great guy to work for.
Let's talk about someone who really made a name for herself, both here and at KHOM, especially through dialogue. Marie Bergeron.
Oh, Marie is probably the best newswoman going. If Marie had come along 10 years later, maybe 15 years later, we'd have seen her on TV news. I'm certain of it. She was a wonderful reporter. She really had, in addition to knowing everybody in town, which was a real benefit, she had a way of, she had everyone's trust. People knew that Marie would be fair with the story and were more likely to tell her things than they would tell an out-of-town reporter. Somebody from New Orleans or Baton Rouge might call up and want to comment about a story or checking out a lead. They wouldn't get anything. But Marie, they would open up to because they knew that she would be honest with them and she would handle the story with integrity and that it would be done in a fair and a balanced way. And she was a consummate professional, just a wonderful lady to work with.
Let's also go back to someone you mentioned earlier who was very well established in sports but was also a good first-class engineer, Roy Pugh.
Oh, Roy was a great guy. Roy had learned engineering in the Navy, and of course, being from up north and all, he had a little bit of trouble with some of the names around here, at least for the first, at least year or so, but he came around fine. He was the voice of the Colonels, of course, for years and years, and I had the privilege of working with him a couple of seasons while I was at Nicholls State doing the color analyst. Whenever Roy would take a breath, I would occasionally get to do something. And I remember that we had to get a little hourglass, a little 3-minute egg timer, because so many people said, Roy, we love listening to you. You're great and exciting to listen to, but you never give the score. So we bought a little egg timer, and I can remember flipping it for him and pointing to it, and he would give the score, and then he'd go off on about the play or what was happening on the field. And every once in a while, I'd have to point to the egg timer and turn it over, and he would give the score. But that certainly wasn't a failing. He was fun to listen to. He was fun to listen to and fun to work with. He was actually the only other employee that was kept from the original owners when Mr. Sadie brought the station and when the folks at La Terre bought it in, I want to say, 73, that Roy and I were the only two employees that were kept. And he had the morning show. Of course, when the station was sold, we went off the air for overnight, and we turned the station, basically did a lot of the improvements that exist today in terms of equipment, wiring, and layout of the station. Installed a new control board, new cart machines, new turntables, new speakers, soundproofing, new transmitter equipment overnight. Our engineer for that was Val Chauvin, who still lives in the Thibodaux area, and Val was just an unbelievable engineer. It was it was amazing to watch him work. He basically did all of this with a little bit of help from some of us from time to time, but basically he did all of this layout and did the work.
There's many people I know you worked with that we may not have a chance to get to, and we've talked about them in previous installments, but there's something that you need to tell the listeners about that we mentioned on the phone when Mr. Leo Albert was here and Jimmy Levine. Tell everybody the alarm clock story.
Okay, I've gotten credit for the alarm clock story, but it was not me. I didn't do it. If I had, had I been here, I would have either done it or and I certainly appreciated it occurring. But at the time, Leo was working the morning show, and when you get here at 6 o'clock in the morning to start the day, or 5 o'clock in the morning at that time we started broadcasting at 6. You came in early to get the news off the machine, to make coffee, do whatever you had to do, get some records lined up, get the log and see what was going to happen. This is whenever we had paper logs every day, and everything you played was written down. So all of the news was kept in a basket under the control board in the main control room, and it was a wire basket, just like this one. And Leo fell victim to a prank from his good buddy Jimmy Levine. Jimmy, who worked middays, knew that when Leo came in, he would, like a lot of us, prop the door open and secure it with a mic stand or a doorstop because it was cooler out there than in here. And when there's no one in the outer office, it really wasn't a problem. So what Jimmy did is he set an alarm clock for 7:04 to go off during the 7 o'clock news, which in those days lasted from 7 o'clock till about 7:15, because you did local news, regional and state news, and then you did any national news that you had. So it was a scheduled 15-minute newscast. It could go long. Well, Jimmy set up an alarm clock for Leo, and of course in the middle of a story about the Russians or something, a very serious story, the alarm clock goes off. And to hear him tell it, Leo said he just turned off the microphone switch, the pot, and he just started searching for it. He started going through all the stacks of paper and AP copy and newspaper and everything, and he finally found it, heard it, and found it on the shelf. With one hand, he reached in, grabbed it, and threw it against the door that was propped open, breaking into hundreds of pieces, and the scars on the and then reopened his microphone and just continued with the news like nothing happened. And the scars are on the door to this day. I'm happy to see they're still here after all this time.
Wow. Now I know there's a lot of things that probably happened to you in terms of news in the 5 or so years you were here. Anything that you had to report or that someone else reported that seemed to stand out?
Well, let's see. We had a couple of pretty big, spectacular fire here downtown. The Schifani building here on 3rd Street burned, and that was probably 75. In addition to working here, I was in the volunteer fire department here in West Thibodaux Fire Company, and so I was involved in the story for a couple of different sources. We also had the Roxas fire, the big fire at the Rebel Club comes to mind. Let me see. The governor was here a couple of times. Governor Edwards came in the station. Did change the form of government here. Went from in that time we went from a board of trustees form of government in Thibodaux to the present council form of government that we had. We also went from the old style charter police jury form of government in Lafourche Parish to home rule charter system. So politically and governmentally, there's been a lot of changes, but nothing else that I can think of.
Well, you briefly touched on it earlier, but what was your reason for getting out of radio?
Well, actually, when I graduated from Nichols in computer science, I found out that they wanted me, in addition to doing an air shift, to sell advertising, and frankly, I'm not a salesperson. I have a brother that's a salesperson in my family, but I didn't get any of those genes. And I did okay the 3 or 4 months that I did it, but it really wasn't something I wanted to do. And I couldn't do what I wanted to do here, so I wound up going to work for Billy Tozan for a year as a legislative aide, and I think that was 77 or 78, and then in 78 I went to work for General Adjustment Bureau in Houma, and I worked there for 8 years, and then I was recruited by my present employer, CNA Insurance Company, and I've been there ever since.
Well, before we run, is there anything you'd like to say to all the listeners out there?
Well, I'd just like to thank you for letting me come in and see the station and have a chance to talk to you about some of the things that we did. We had some great times here. Just like to say congratulations on the 50th anniversary, and you never sounded better.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
John Raynor, part of KTIB's tremendous service to the Houma-Thibodaux area.